Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of CookieCast. Today on CookieCast, it's the NFL podcast Laces Out. We've got a guest. Big thank you to our guest. Got me out of a bind in that whole guest situation. So big thank you to our guest this week. Big thank you to you for joining us. If you're here, if it's first time, well, you're in for a treat. If it's not your first time, but you haven't done any of the following, maybe it's time. Please do consider like, share, subscribe and comment. Leave a review where you can leave a review. Obviously the big one, share the podcast around. If you've got an NFL fan in your life, send this podcast their way. They will absolutely love it. Right, let's get started. Here we go. This is CookieCast. Laces Out.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching. That is us here at the American Football Podcast. That is Laces Out, brought to you by the CookieCast Podcast Network. For those of you watching, you will see not one, not two, but three happy, smiling faces staring back at you, which does mean that Mr. Cook, he's only going to hit the ball out of the park and got us a guest for the week. His face will be familiar to you all as he is coming to us from the football podcast, the wrestling podcast. He's been on a BS cast or two in his time. It is, of course, Hull's finest, Mr. Stuart Woodmansey. How are we, sir?
I am very grateful that you didn't lead that line with Crime Watch. So thank you very much for that introduction.
Obviously, we're now all going to be diving into the archives
now,
of YouTube to see what Mr. Woodmansey was.
We were all told that was a case of mistaken identity, and we believed that at the time. But now I'm starting to think that maybe that wasn't the case.
No, it's absolutely, it was a case of mistaken identity. However, unfortunately, still means that my face may have been on there at one time. Believe that or not, you'll never know. Anyway, shall we move on?
This took a dark turn very quickly. Obviously, the other voice that you heard there, another face that you will be gleefully seeing on the screen, is the head honcho of the network, Mr. Andrew Cook. How are you, sir?
Yeah, it's one of those things. I must hold my hands up on this one and say a big thank you to Stu for getting me out of a bind, because honestly, at the point in time that I was like, right, I need to sort of guest out for this week's football podcast, I realised I could not dedicate the brain power to the process, and was like, fuck. So I put the bat signal out, and Stu answered the call, because, as we all know, he is Batman.
I'm just happy that it coincided. I'm pretty sure that between us, not on the podcast last time I was on, but it may have been touted that I wasn't allowed back on until I sorted my shit out on fantasy, and I actually won this week, so here I am. It's worked out quite nicely.
I feel that fantasy should be banned, and here's why. I can't put a team together at all. So I think we should ban it.
I mean, if that was the case...
Did anybody see there was this famous, this season, there was this famous thing that was like the guy that posted his lineup for week 2 and he couldn't put a team together because his entire bench was injured, out, doubtful, questionable, whatever. Yeah, that was week 3 for me. Got no better since then. I took a picture of my bench at the weekend where I went, can I leave a couple of spaces empty and just take the loss because I physically don't have the players to put in? And it ain't the buys that are crippling me, it's the injured players that are. Yeah, let's move on from that. I nearly said a bad thing. Yeah. So fantasy can officially. Let me just check. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, it's official. It can go fuck itself. There we go, gents.
Well, let's dwell no more on fantasy and let's deal with the real world. And obviously, week 6 has been and gone. With it, it brought 14 games, as there were 14 on bye this week. There were the Chiefs, the Rams, the Dolphins, and the Vikings. So they couldn't suffer any more injuries or issues, concussions in the Dolphins' case. So that left us with 14 games to be going at. Obviously, last week's guest was the stats mistress herself, pulling double duty. Leanne provided the game picks for week 6. So, without further ado, in third place, with 11 selections correct, 11 was only good enough for third place this weekend. It was me. I was let down by the Jags not beating the Bears, the Broncos not beating the Chargers, cheers to, and the Jets not beating the Bills.
Why did you pick the Broncos, Paul? Come on, we'd had a week's rest at that as well.
Broncos were at home. Chargers were, the Los Angeles Chargers.
But the Broncos, man, come on.
I know, but in my head, Bo Nix had actually started to look good.
Yep.
And I wasn't entirely convinced that Herbert's foot was all that sort of all 100% of that.
I think from the stuff I'd seen after the game, it definitely wasn't 100% after the game, but he got through it, didn't he? So
yeah, well,
was it at home for the Broncos as well?
Yeah, it was in Denver as well. So I was thinking there's another one. There's another reason.
Mile High it does weird shit to other teams. Like you can send like a really good team in there and they get beat, and it's like we're not entirely sure what happened. It was maybe the altitude. Let's go with that.
Don't have all that extra oxygen.
11 out of 14 points, only good enough to get me third place. With 12 of 14 selections, it was the stats mistress. She was let down. She was let down by the Seahawks not beating the 49ers. So she got off to an 0-1 start. Her second one, again, was the Broncos not beating the Chargers, which means getting the win this week. With 14 of 14 selections, no less, Mr. Andrew Cook with the Cookie Cast podcast's first ever regular season clean sweep. I had to go through it a couple of times because I was like, surely he hasn't got every single game
surely
correct.
He can't possibly have predicted these games correctly. That's physically impossible. He can't put a fantasy football team together. This man is not capable of doing this.
But to go through one by one book selections, he had the 49ers to beat the Seahawks, tick. The Bears to beat the Jaguars, tick. The Ravens to beat the Commanders, yes. Packers over Cardinals, Bucks over Saints, Eagles over Browns, Colts and the Titans, Chargers the Broncos, Steelers at the Raiders, Falcons at the Panthers, Lions at the Cowboys, Bengals at the Giants, Bills at the Jets. So not only is he doing it, he's doing it all with road teams mainly here. So I think, to be fair, you had backed all the favourites, but then again, there's nothing wrong with that. And I think I did see something on Twitter that said that when they were going into Monday Night Football, if the Bills beat the Jets, there was one bookie that said it's quite possibly going to be the worst outcome they've ever known in a week's betting. So I think it was one of those weeks where every single one of the favourites hit. So
I should have had a pound. I should have had a freaking pound on it. Like I should put a pound on the Patriots.
Well, then the thing is, though, if you had to put a pound on it, you'd have had to introduce a new podcast segment specifically for YouTube, where it was Andy running around his garden, swinging his top round his head, doesn't he?
Oh my
So,
days!
indeed, full beans, 14 out of 14. Does get Mr. Cook the win. I have only given you 1 point, but I have put an asterisk next to it because obviously it's just going to if I give him 2 points, it's going to mess up the scoring system. It's going to do my head in. So I've given you the 1 point, but I have put an asterisk next to it. In the case of a tie, that just automatically gives you the win. So if we tie at the end of the season, you get the win regardless.
Ooh, a little banker. I like it.
So yes, that means after 6 weeks, it does move Andy to 3, myself to 3. The guests still get to score this season. That does leave us with the side bet, and obviously the side bet can't go any better for Mr. Cook. He had a full clean sweep, so he can't have got any of his side bet to on. So he had the Falcons, the Texans, the Bears, and the Bengals. 4 points out of 4, moves himself to 16 points for the season. I would only lose points if I had selected the Jags, the Broncos, or the Jets, which I did not do. I had the Steelers, the Eagles, the Bucks, and the Packers. So I also get 4 points out of 4 and move to 17 points for the season. Maintain that 1 point lead. That is the week 6 results gone through, done and dusted. That just leaves us with week 6's stats.
Indeed. And as we know from a stats perspective, we have a team of, I want to say the word, but I think I'll get it wrong, statisticians. One of those is a guy who works across the waters for USA Today by the name Nate Davis. So credit where credit is due. But I think almost more important than that is our own stats mistress, who takes all of the stats, runs them through the stat machine to produce the cream of the stat crop. This week, I've divided those equally between all of us. And I'll start us off with NFL Week 6 stats, number 1. Sunday saw the Detroit Lions take a 47-9 triumph over Dallas's worst home loss since Jerry Jones bought the franchise in 1989. A little side to that is I saw a video the other day where they broke down all the absolute shithousery that the Lions were pulling in that game. They're just like, here's just a complete piss take of a move. Number 2, it's a bit of a doozy. 5 rookie quarterbacks started on Sunday, but only one was victorious. That would be the Chicago Bears' Caleb Williams, top pick of the 2024 draft, who threw a career-high 4 touchdown passes in a 35-16 rout of the Jacksonville Jaguars in London, no less. Williams became the first quarterback drafted number 1 overall ever to win 4 of his first 6 NFL starts. In addition, Williams' 4 touchdown passes were a record in London's Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Number 3 is nearly as big as number 2. Elsewhere, New Orleans Saints rookie quarterback Spencer Rattler and New England Patriots rookie quarterback Drake May took the L in their maiden starts. Rattler took on fellow former Oklahoma Sooner Baker Mayfield in a contest that devolved into a good old Big 12 shootout, with Mayfield's Tampa Bay Buccaneers prevailing 51-27 in a game that featured nearly 900 yards of total offense. The Bucs 594 yards were the most ever in one game for a franchise now in its 49th season. And fourth and final for me, a good chunk came via Buccaneers wide receiver Chris Godwin, the NFL's leader in yards after catch per next gen stat. So there you go. Fourth for me. Paul, I believe I may have sent you the next four.
You have indeed. I will pick up the baton and back to this year's rookies. Denver Broncos QB Bo Nix and the Washington Commanders Jaden Daniels both saw their winning streaks of 3 and 4 games respectively ended on Sunday. Baltimore's running back Derrick Henry rushed for 132 yards and 2 scores, taking over the league's rushing lead with 704 yards. He's now on pace for 1,995 over 17 games, and a very happy Mr. Woodmansey. As for Henry, he's the first player since Hall of Famer LaDainian Tomlinson in 2005 to run for a touchdown in his team's first 6 games. LT wound up with a league record 31 touchdowns overall that year, plus a record 28 on the ground, and was named the league's MVP. Just saying. And the final stat for me, is there any doubt that the NFC North has emerged as the league's best division? It's the only one with all of its teams above 500, and if the season ended as of today, 3 of those 4 teams would advance to the playoffs. I actually checked that stat and I had a quick look at it, and the only thing that's keeping the Chicago Bears out must be that the Bucs get in on strength of schedule as it stands at the moment, because they obviously have identical records, and I think that's what they do as the tiebreaker. It goes down to strength of schedule. That is it for me. So it's just over to Mr. Stuart Woodmansey to give us his stats and finish the segment off.
Indeed. So we move to though the undefeated Minnesota Vikings were on bye, the rest of the division cleaned up on Sunday, with the Bears, the Lions, and the Packers winning by an average of 26 points. Things should get nicely heated once intra-divisional play ramps up, given only the Pack and the Vikes have met thus far. And moving on, how good has Lions quarterback Jared Goff been? Sunday, he became only the second signal caller, along with Drew Brees, to record a passer rating in excess of 150 in consecutive starts. And sacked 5 more times in Sunday's 2016 loss to the Eagles, Cleveland Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson has now gone down a league-high 31 times. Watson is on pace to be sacked 88 times, which would shatter the single-season league record, 76 by David Carr. And finally, whilst Cleveland did keep the score close, it must be noted that Watson did little to move an offense that generated just 244 yards, though amazingly, that's the team's second highest total of the season. Comparing that to the Bucs stat that you gave slightly earlier makes it seem even worse. And that's it.
So on the Browns, I saw something that flashed up where it was saying that, I can't remember I'll never be able to find it now as well, but that's really annoying. But it was something like they took into account all of the different teams. So basically obviously they took all the 32 teams from each season, and then obviously wound it back to a point, like it must have been in like the 70s or the 80s or something like that. And it was basically, of all of those teams that had played, this current Browns team, I think it worked out that there was something like 568 teams in total. So it was obviously the season for each of those teams since, let's for argument's sake say like 1980. And it said that of all those teams, the current Cleveland Browns team ranked something like 564th to like 567th for like total passing yards, total yards gained in a game, like, you know, all of the worst possible stats that you could ever possibly want and stuff like that. And people are just saying that they keep asking the head coach, is, are you still fully behind Deshaun Watson? And he just keeps coming back with, yep. And then obviously they go this week and they trade arguably his best receiver. So they already can't get anything done on the offensive side of the ball, and he's now lost his number one target. What the fuck?
And let's not forget, this is a league that features the Carolina Panthers.
But as it stands at the moment, the Browns are currently slated for the number one pick, and I think there was some bits that I was reading earlier where it says obviously the conspiracy theorists are now coming to obviously they're on the hoof for a lot of money for Deshaun Watson's contract because they obviously can't trade him because who in their right mind is taking him at this point? Do they just bite the bullet and say, right, the money's dead? He clearly can't play the game anymore. But we can't get rid of him. So do we just basically make the team worse?
Yeah.
So that we end up with a good draft pick, so we can draft the next quarterback.
Yeah,
and then it stops being an issue we have to worry about.
Absolutely the move at this point in time. Let's face it, this will be his last football posting. Once the Browns are done with him, he will disappear like smoke in the night. It'll just be one of those things that'll be the end of that. He's not getting traded, he's not getting picked up by anybody else. It's going to be the end of his football career. So the Browns need to be looking at the best thing for them.
Yeah.
And that absolutely is the best thing. Get the best pick you can get a quarterback, go from there.
Yeah. Obviously, that wasn't the only sort of trade that went down this week. In a surprise to absolutely nobody, Devontae Adams managed to push through. Well, I say Devontae Adams, let's be honest. Aaron Rodgers pushed through the trade that he wanted. He obviously wasn't happy with the wide receivers he had at his disposal. So big boo-boo face to the bean counters in New York. I don't like that. I don't like those receivers. I want my own receiver. I want the person that I'm best friends with. I want the guy that I play on the playground with.
Can I ask, at this point in time, can I ask you a real quick question? Just wondering. In next week's game, where he throws the game-losing interception, whose fault will it be next week? I'm just wondering if we know at this point in time, so we can preempt it, because that's the reason they're losing games.
Well, bear in mind, obviously, this week he blamed the interception on Mike Williams not running the correct route. And what's happened to Mike Williams? Oh, that's correct. The Jets have released Mike Williams. They've cut him from his contract because no one saw that coming. Oh no, Mike, it's nothing personal, mate. We've just got to make space for that new guy we brought in. Oh, you mean the guy that Aaron Rodgers played with before and definitely, didn't ask him to trade for? In the same way that he definitely didn't have anything to do with Robert Saleh losing his job.
No.
Yeah. Not gonna lie, not Aaron Rodgers' biggest fan personally. The more he opens his mouth, the more he comes across as a hugely spoiled twat.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's week 6, done and dusted. A little bit of trade talk, done and dusted. We have week 7's games to predict. Just the 2 teams on bye this week. The Chicago Bears, obviously, they are doing the coming back from London, bit tired, could use a week off, so they've been given the week off. And I think that the league obviously had already agreed that week 7 would be the bye for the Cowboys, but they've obviously probably thought, Lions gave him a bit of a spanking, didn't they? They probably need to, ice down those buttocks and, fry a little bit of cream. Take the ouchie out of the old bum. So no Dallas Cowboys or Chicago Bears games to do this week. Which should leave us with 15 games in total. Myself, Mr. Cook, and this week's guest, Mr. Woodmansey, have made our predictions for all those 15 games. We will take a very, very short break, and then when we come back to you on the other side of the break, we will go through those 15 game selections. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. And just like that, the break is up. So, week 6 is done. It's dusty. Week 7, we said 15 games to go through. Myself, Mr. Cook, and Mr. Woodmansey have already put our predictions in. They are in the book. They are locked in. They cannot and will not be changed. So, we'll go through the games. I'll give the picks. We'll see where we're at the end of the week. So, week 7's first game is the Thursday Night Football and see the Denver Broncos taking on the New Orleans Saints. And obviously, this is Sean Payton going back to the team that he was head coach of for a long time. Won a Super Bowl with them, was there when Hurricane Katrina hit, and to obviously help rebuild the team, the city, re-establish a little bit of sort of, something for the people of New Orleans to sort of cheer for. And obviously they did that, and they got their Super Bowl win. Probably will be an emotional time for him to go back to New Orleans. As such, Andy and Stu think it will be too much, and they're backing the Saints to get the win here. I've obviously never heard the term once bitten, twice shy, as I have backed the Broncos to get the win here. Now, obviously, I can see out the corner of my eye, I can see Stu shaking his head in a, what is this fucking eye? What is this fucking idiot doing? But, hear me out. Saints don't have their starting quarterback. Bo Nix has actually started to look like he actually might have legs. The Saints are on a 4-game losing streak.
Yeah, but there was an absolute shit ton of points in that game still. Also, if you're that brave about it, put it as your first pick on the side bet.
Well, we'll get to that. Don't you worry about it. You don't even get involved with the side bet, son. You don't come at me giving me what I need to do on the side bet. Look, you can tell I'm annoyed because I'm putting my finger really close to the camera to be pointing at you.
Andy's going to slip me a $5 later for saying stuff like this just to bait you in. It's fine.
He's what looks like a juicy hook you're dangling in front of me there, Mr. Woodmansey. I'll just chomp down on that little bastard. So that's our first difference of opinion. 2 people picking the Saints, just me on Broncos Island. Our second game of the week is the final UK game of the season. And what a game! I can't believe they've let us have this one, lads. It is the New England Patriots, 1-5, taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars, 1-5.
I know we've spoken about this at length. I know it's like, kicking a man when he's down and stuff, but this year's London games have been absolutely terrible. It's like the NFL looked at the situation and went, we've signed up for it now. We've committed to it. We've probably signed some sort of contract. There's probably some sort of money involved. So we have to send some games over to England. So what are the worst games we've got on the season? Okay, well, these teams need to play each other. These teams, right, send all of those to London, and that's it, done for another year, because
you not think it's comparable to like Manchester United of 1999 doing a pre-season tour of America as opposed to Manchester United of current day doing a pre-season tour of America? It's like they were good once. People will know the name. They'll just go and watch them regardless of how shit they are now.
Yeah, so in the heads of the NFL like sort of higher ups, they've probably gone off and thought, hang on a second. About 7 years ago, this was the AFC Championship game to determine which one of these teams made the Super Bowl. And it's like, yeah, mate, Tom Brady was playing in that game. Drake May is playing in this one. I mean, there's a little bit of difference in those two quarterbacks. But even though it's 2, 1, and 5 teams going up against each other, this is probably a case of which team sucks less, I'm guessing. And we've all backed the Jags, probably because they've got the UK sort of homer advantage to it, I guess.
But are they not at Wembley this time as well for the fact that
Yes,
football's back on?
we've had the 2 games at Tottenham, and this is the Wembley game, because I'm pretty sure the way that it works is that the Jags don't play anywhere other than Wembley as a home stadium.
But they've had 2 weeks in the UK, so they'll, in theory, be less jet lagged, etc., etc., etc.
You'd like to think so.
A little bit more used to the weather, blah 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 blah. That was why I picked him.
Yeah.
Same. It's that odd occasion where you could toss a coin and you'd still be happy if it landed on the edge of it.
You
say you'd rather go for the tie in this game?
Last week, I saw the power ranking video for all 32 teams. No surprises. 32nd team, Carolina Panthers. 31st power rank, New England Patriots. And I was like, let's rewind 5 years and tell me that you would expect to see that.
Crazy, isn't it? Crazy how the mighty have fallen. So that's the early sort of I was going to say prime time games, definitely not prime time. But that's the earlier games. We move to the 6 p.m. slot, the first game of which is the Seattle Seahawks taking on the Atlanta Falcons. Now, we've got another difference of opinion here. Andy and Stu have both backed the Falcons to continue their winning streak, whereas I've gone with the Seahawks to bounce back on this one. So the Seahawks, I believe, are riding a bit of a 3-game losing streak after they opened the season fairly confidently. I think they have lost the last 3. Yeah. I think it's because as soon as the Falcons seem to play anyone decent, I just see Kirk Cousins resorting back to type personally, and just going back into his shell and just tossing up a couple of pick sixes, etc., etc. Obviously, you two back in.
It's less about how the team will perform, and we're back to Paul's Kirk Cousins prejudice again.
I was gonna say. Honestly, not my favourite person. I've said before, I think it's come up in the last couple of weeks. I could probably do an entire podcast on that man. But I did wonder if maybe this was the season where Paul was going to have to go, okay, let's agree that he can actually play, but apparently not. So I'm happy. I'm like, yeah, let's do this.
He will need to show me a lot more for me to be convinced that he's a talented quarterback. Next up, we have a couple of consensus picks. Obviously, these ones aren't that difficult to discuss. We have the Titans at the Bills, and we've all gone for we've all gone for the Buffalo Bills. And then ditto, we've got the Bengals at the Cleveland Browns. I think it would take a bit of a disaster of epic proportions for the Bengals to not win this one. But saying that, we have all back the Bengals. Saying that, doesn't it just scream the Cincinnati Bengals to lose on the road against the Browns?
You're not betting your house on this one because.
Next up, we have another difference of opinion. Outside shout of this one being game of the week for me, Texans at Packers. Andy and Stu have both backed the Texans on this one. I've gone with the Packers because I think home field advantage will count quite a lot here. And the Texans haven't looked, whilst the Texans have been winning games, Stroud's been looking a bit shaky at times. He's thrown a couple of interceptions.
It's almost like
we've got Joe Mixon back.
It's almost like somebody drafted him to their fantasy team, and all of a sudden he looks real shaky. I don't buy that. Who could tell?
I feel like we should move swiftly on. Next up, we've got another across the board pick. It's the Dolphins at the Colts, and given the fact that the Dolphins don't even know who's going to be playing under centre, but day to day, I can only assume that's why we've all gone with the Colts on that one. Next up, we've got another difference of opinion here, and I'm a little bit surprised in this one. So it's a divisional game. This one should really be game of the week, and it's the Lions at the Vikings. And I'm the only one who's taken the Lions. I'm assuming for you both, it's just because the Vikings are unbeaten.
And at home.
True.
So there was that sort of three-sided factor for me. Vikings at home, Vikings are unbeaten. Lions are coming off the back of an absolute monster of a game. I wonder if that will give a little bit of a dip. Because like I said before, they were getting absolutely crazy in that game. Just like making up the most mental shit. They are going up against undefeated at this point in time, so it might be a different story going up against a team like that. Not to say that the Vikings are, world beaters, but undefeated after 5 games is undefeated after 5 games. So
I think the thing with the Vikings that I want to see is how they react after they have their first loss.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see as to sort of like where this Vikings team actually sort of finds himself personally.
Yeah.
Next up, the last of the 6 p.m. games sees it's another divisional game. It's the Eagles at the Giants. We've all backed the Eagles. No real surprise there. Then we have the first of the 9 o'clock games, which sees the Las Vegas Raiders at the Los Angeles Rams. Myself and Andy have taken the Rams on this one off the back of their bye. Stu has gone in with the Raiders on that one. Is there any particular reason as to why?
Because of it's because of the new ownership, isn't it?
Tom Brady is a minority owner now of the Las Vegas Raiders.
And hopefully for all involved, it goes just as well as the Birmingham City takeover. No, the Raiders I thought had a better week last week. It was just more on the sense of that they felt like they were on a bit of an upturn. The Rams, seemingly from going from champs to chumps as quick as they possibly can at the moment. So I'm sticking with the form from last weekend was all it was.
Honestly, this was the game that I ummed and ahed the most over, and I had the Raiders down at the point before I sent my prediction for the other way. But this was the one that I ummed and ahed the most over.
The Raiders are going to have to start pulling their finger out for competition anyway, in the sense of that they're going to get another sports team in Vegas very shortly, aren't they, when they move the Oakland Athletics baseball team over. So going to be more competition for bums on seats. So they need to start doing something.
Indeed. I saw that. So I think the owner had said that this week they've traded Devontae Adams and got Tom Brady, and it was like, yeah, that's hilarious, mate. But your fans actually want to win games, so could you maybe stop trading away your best players? Next up, we've got the last of the 9 o'clock slate of games. These are the 9:25 games. We've got the Panthers at the Washington Commanders. No surprise there. We've all taken the Commanders. And then there's a repeat of last season's Super Bowl in which the Kansas City Chiefs take on the San Francisco 49ers. It could be the fact that it's off the back of the bye, but we have all taken the Chiefs in this one, even though it's in San Francisco. I have put the Chiefs. Would not be surprised at all if the 49ers won that one.
But this comes down to what I was saying last week, where, ultimately my number one question for this season at this point, and I imagine going forward, is can you tell me which of the 31 other teams can beat the Kansas City Chiefs at this point in time?
Yeah, it's a good point. We'll have to watch this space. So that just leaves us with the Sunday night football, which sees the New York Jets and their newly acquired wide receiver talent Devontae Adams travelling to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers, who could find themselves in a bit of, I don't want to say bother, but obviously the reports that have come out this week said that Mike Tomlin's potentially erring on the side of giving the start to Russell Wilson.
Yeah, apparently so.
Even though Justin Fields has gotten to 4-2 and looks pretty decent. Strange one that he might be upsetting the apple cart when they're in a positive mindset.
Is this then going to be billed as battle of the people who interfere with their teams, i.e. quarterbacks?
Pretty much. Regardless of whether they're going to make a change in the centre or not, we've all backed the Steelers to get the win there. And then again, they've actually booked in a double header Monday Night Football slot. The actual game that's on the main broadcast feed on ESPN, and we'll have the Joe Buck, Troy Aikman commentary duo. We'll see the Ravens travelling to Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers. Despite how good the Bucs have been playing, we have all taken the Ravens there. I think that's pretty much a no-brainer. Although, again, obviously the Ravens have lost games, so I wouldn't be surprised if the Bucs keep that one close and maybe have an outside shot at getting the win there. But yeah, you kind of have to take the Ravens, I suppose, at the moment as the hot team. And the final game, being played at 2 a.m. UK time, sees the Los Angeles Chargers travelling to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. Now, obviously, the Cardinals might be without Marvin Harrison Jr. after he left the game on Sunday with a concussion. So obviously, that'll be we'll have to wait and see if he clears the concussion protocol. Obviously, time is on his side because they don't play until Monday, so that does give him a couple of extra days to get through the protocol. It was interesting because in our group chat, Matt had obviously said that he'd seen some form of advert or something to do with the was it the new Call of Duty game?
Yeah, but it's only stateside promotion, obviously, because 90% of people this side won't have a clue who these people are.
And apparently, was it Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. were both front and centre on the adverts. So I think Matt was under the impression that get them out of your fantasy team in the fastest possible way and replace them with any other available player because their heads are not going to be on football at all. That probably speaks volumes in the fact that we've all backed the Los Angeles Chargers to get the win here in this particular game.
It's an excellent choice. That's all I'm saying. It's an excellent choice.
It's the hot pick. It's the hot pick, lads. It's the hot pick. So that's the 15 games. No consensus picks across the 15 for any of us making the selection. So there's no need for any tie breaks there. That just leaves us with the aforementioned side bet. Obviously, I'm on 17 points out of a possible 24. Andy 16 out of a possible 24 so far for the season, which means that Andy does have the option to go first or put me into bat.
When you were going through the numbers for 17 and 16, I was like, ooh, means I get to pick first. I'm just going to quickly look and see who the Carolina Panthers are playing. We go. Yeah, there's some. It's another week of but no's. Yes, there it is. I will take the Washington Commanders to decimate the Carolina Panthers, please.
So therefore that leaves my next two selections. Well, only one selection, obviously, after I take the Broncos with my first overall pick in the side bet, as was given to me by Mr. Stuart Woodmansey.
I agree with your decision, and I like it.
I'm obviously not going to do that because I don't have rocks in my head as brains. I am, however, going to shuffle. Well, yeah, I'm going to shuffle away from New Orleans. I'm going to travel over to the New York State region, where I will pick the Buffalo Bills to take care of business against the Tennessee Titans. And my second selection I don't know. It's not a straightforward week, is it?
It really is.
I don't like it, but I'll go with the Colts to beat the Dolphins, mainly just because who knows what the hell's going on with the Dolphins at the moment. Your next two, please, Mr. Cook.
What's interesting there is there was a couple of games that stood out that I thought you were going to take, and I was like, oh man, I wish I'd have got in there. As it is, that allows me to take the Pittsburgh Steelers to beat the New York Jets. And then run all the way over and take the Philadelphia Eagles to take care of business against the New York Giants. Before you take another pick, one of your picks, if you needed to feel like you were on the winning team, you've taken the Bills to beat the Tennessee Titans. You and the 99% of people picking that game, Tennessee Titans have got 1% picks.
So that is basically the only people picking that are the Tennessee Titans fans that have literally got the T tattooed to the top of their
the
forehead.
6 Titans fans that are left have all gone, well, our team's getting it done this week.
Oh man, I've got to pick 2 more teams from this detritus. Christ almighty. Considering their record, I cannot believe I'm about to say this, but I'm going to take the Jags.
I looked at that game so many times and went, I can't do it. I couldn't pick of those 2 teams, which is going to be ultimately the worst of those 2 teams.
And just because they're playing at home, I'm going to take the Rams to beat the Raiders.
Interesting. There are 2 games I'm looking at right now, and I'm like, I mean, they on paper they should. In fact, you know what?
There's one that's jumping out to me. That if you don't say it, I'll be amazed.
Okay, I'm doing it. The Cincinnati Bengals to beat the Cleveland Browns. Me and my 93% picked Cincinnati Bengals up against the remaining 7% for the Cleveland Browns.
It's where I thought you were going to go. So, to clarify, Andy has the Washington Commanders at home to the Carolina Panthers, the Pittsburgh Steelers at home to the New York Jets, the Philadelphia Eagles at the New York Giants, and the Cincinnati Bengals at the Cleveland Browns. Whereas I have the Buffalo Bills at home to the Tennessee Titans, the Indianapolis Colts at home to the Miami Dolphins, the Jacksonville Jaguars at home to the New England Patriots, and the Los Angeles Rams at home to the Las Vegas Raiders. Obviously, we've given you a shiny pound coin, Mr. Woodmansey. If you had to place it on either one of those four teams as a fourfold accumulator to win back, let's say, £85, which are you most likely to place that shiny pound coin at the feet of? Mr. Cook's four selections or Mr. Williams's four selections?
Would I get extra money back if I even predicted what score it will be between you both as well? Because I'm going to let you in a little behind.
You've potentially just opened up a new game, which would be the side bet.
Well, I'll let you in a little secret, just to slightly pull back the curtain for those of you on YouTube, because I have a really technical system as to how I was working this out as those picks were coming in. It's basically Andy was my left hand and Paul was my right hand. So left hand, I think Andy will get all four of them right, and right hand, I think Paul's getting two.
So, well, you think the Bills, the Colts, and the Jags are all going to win?
Well, that's what I put on my predictions. But the Raiders is the one that I'm least happy with on your side. But the Dolphins Colts one was a little bit of a toss up at the time anyway, so that's my other one.
I think that's fair enough. I mean, surely the Dolphins they're not going to suck for the whole season. And whilst they don't have the number one quarterback playing, they do still have Tyreek Hill. So all it takes is one or two deep balls just to go to it, and you'll have another girl pregnant. No, that's not. No, we're not going there.
Just a filthy rumour.
We can always hope that he gets pulled over by the police, because if you've seen his stats on Daisy gets pulled over by the police per yard versus Daisy doesn't get pulled over by the police per yard, it's like 3 times as many yards. So fingers crossed he gets pulled over by the police.
Well, it's ridiculous. That brings us to the end of another week in the National Football League. Anything else to bring to the table, gentlemen?
Very, very quickly, something I mentioned last week as a potential, it popped up on a podcast I was listening to, and I thought it was really interesting. And I was like, man, can you imagine if I knew a man who, some people call him Rain Man. I don't know where that comes from. But, Paul, can you tell me how many times the Raiders have moved?
No, but I do know that they have. Did this so? I know that they've been the Oakland Raiders more than once.
They have,
but I don't know if they were the Los Angeles Raiders more than once. So my guess would be that they've moved 3 times.
Can you name those moves?
So obviously, I think they started off in Oakland.
Correct.
Then went to LA.
Correct.
Then moved back to Oakland.
Correct.
And then obviously they've now moved to Las
Vegas. Yeah. So 13 seasons after moving from Oakland to Los Angeles, the Raiders moved back to Oakland. A little bit of one of those because there was a new stadium built and stuff like that. And then 25 years later, moved to greener pastures in a new stadium in Las Vegas. In case anybody's wondering, I may have looked up team moves in the NFL, and I may be starting to pepper the next X number of weeks with, can you name the number of moves? We might even have which teams move the most.
Oh, that'll be physically impossible. I remember there's a video on YouTube that's like 50 minutes long, and it basically goes through from like the first season to the current season, or whatever the season was when it was released, where they basically went through all of the different team moves and stuff like that, and the name changes and stuff. And there was even like a part where, due to one of the world wars, the Eagles and the Steelers didn't have enough players, so for a couple of seasons they joined forces and called themselves the Steagles. So yeah. So I tell you, you can get into like the rabbit hole of you go in to look at one thing on the internet, and you end up. So let's say, for example, you go in to look at what flavour cheese went into making the original cheeseburger, and then you end up with which guy shot John F. Kennedy or something like that off the back of it, and it's like, how the fuck did I get to that from going in to look at this and stuff like that? I imagine if you were to go down the rabbit hole of how many teams have moved in the NFL, you will be there for quite some time.
Oh yes. So look forward to that for the next few weeks. But that was all I had. I thought I'd give you a little taste of things to come.
Marvellous, wonderful stuff. As always, thank you to you guys for tuning in and listening to us ramble on about the sport that is not from these fair shores. But if Mr. Roger Goodell gets his way, apparently they're looking to increase the international games not to 5 or 6, but to 16 by in the next couple of years. So they obviously hope to. I would imagine it would end up being that they will have one regular season game will be played by each team in the league at least once per season. So watch this space. A thank you to Mr. Stuart Woodmansey for joining us in the guest capacity once again this season. Much appreciated, and we'll look forward to going through those results from week 7 next week. Thank you, as always, to my glamorous co-host, Mr. Cook. If you're new around here, if this is your first time watching us here on YouTube or listening to us on whatever podcast provider you're listening to us from, maybe think about throwing the podcast a follow, like and share and subscribe if you're on YouTube. We're here not just for the NFL podcast. We have the football podcast, the wrestling podcast, the F1 podcast, the Darkest Timeline podcast, where Mr. Cook spews forth the goings on inside that brain of his. Oh my, it's what a place. Many other things coming at you from the Cookie Cast podcast network. That's us done for another week on the NFL podcast. Join us again next week where we'll go through week 7's results. We'll look forward, we'll predict week 8, and you never know. We might get some more trivia on how many times the Arizona Cardinals have moved towns and how many times they've changed names and whatnot. But yes, tune in next week and see what we've got for you. Until then, take care of yourselves, keep an eye out for each other, and we'll see you all next week. Tatty bye for now.
So there we go. What do you think of that? Big thank you to Stu for joining us. Big thank you to you for joining us in whichever capacity it is, audio or video. It's all good. If you want to keep on being a part of the CookieCast crew, you can like, share, subscribe and comment. Leave reviews where you can leave reviews, and do check out the website, thecookiecast.com. There we've got social media links and an email button, and that way you can get in touch with us. That's it for this one. Till next time, I'm going to say bye, and I'll see you then.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to this awesome Cookie Cast.